It's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump takes the White House in convincing fashion, winning the right to become the next president of the United States. The markets tumble on the news, reflecting widespread jitters about that development. South Korea's presidential office convenes a National Security Council meeting to try and gauge the changes to come with the new leadership in the United States. Korea's opposition parties are united in criticizing President Park Geun-hye for the scandal that's enveloped the country, saying she lacks moral integrity and is incapable of running state affairs. America has chosen its next leader, Donald J. Trump. The world watched as the election results came in, as the result is sure to have a big impact on countries around the globe. For more, let's connect to our Eun-shin, who has been keeping up with the numbers for us. Eun-shin, so Americans have made their choice. Trump is their new leader.
That is right, Daniel. With 288 electoral votes, Donald J. Trump is the next president of the United States. Hillary Clinton's final numbers were at 215 votes. Trump celebrated his victory just about an hour ago, thanking Clinton and addressing his supporters at his campaign headquarters in New York. Let's hear what he had to say.
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton. She congratulated us, it's about us, on our victory. And I congratulated her and her family on a very, very hard-fought campaign.
After thanking his supporters, Trump also vowed to deal fairly with other nations and said that America will no longer sell for less. When he first came onto the scene, he was known as a real estate mogul, a reality TV star with no solid political background. And now he's the newly elected, soon-to-be 45th president of the United States.
So, as I can tell by your voice as well, this came as a bit of a shock to most people, right? The majority of polls we'd been getting up to Monday gave Hillary Clinton the edge. So what exactly happened?
Well, it all came down to the swing states where both candidates really put their final efforts into campaigning till the very end. Clinton claimed Virginia, Colorado, and Nevada, but we saw more Trump supporters coming out to vote for him in places we didn't expect to see them. The biggest surprise of the night came from places like Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio, which all turned red for Trump. Together, these states ended up giving him 62 electoral votes, and that's when the predictions for a Trump victory started. Later, he carried on to sweep more purple states, sealing his victory in Pennsylvania and Iowa. And after the numbers came in from Alaska and Wisconsin, he was announced as the next U.S. president. And right now, as he celebrates his victory with his family, congratulations are coming in from nations around the world. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, thank you for those updates, Eun-shin. Well, President Park Geun-hye sent a congratulatory message as well to the United States President-elect Donald Trump Wednesday afternoon. Park expressed hope for stronger cooperation between the two countries to resolve current issues like North Korea's nuclear program and to strengthen bilateral relations. The South Korean government said it will continue to closely coordinate with the new U.S. administration for a stronger alliance as well as for peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula, in Northeast Asia, and around the world. Korea's parliament was also quick to react to the U.S. election news. The ruling Saenuri Party held its consultative meeting with the government in the afternoon to look at the potential changes in the U.S. and its policies concerning the Korean peninsula. Saenuri floor leader Chung Jin-seok offered his congratulations to Donald Trump, saying the party respects Americans' choice for change and asked key government officials to open up channels of communication with the incoming Trump administration. The main opposition Democratic Party of Korea, meanwhile, is currently holding its own emergency meeting of its Supreme Councils. The party's spokesperson said the election reflects U.S. voters' yearning for change and their disappointment with existing politics. The minor opposition People's Party also met in the afternoon, saying it will closely watch the volatile market and work with the government. The Parliament's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee also plans to meet next Monday to survey the government's readiness for possible changes in America's policy on Korea and Northeast Asia. According to Trump, South Korea and Japan should develop their own nuclear arsenal rather than depend on the U.S. strategic umbrella. But will he make good on his comments? Connie Kim has this report.
South Korea says the results of the U.S. presidential election will not dent the current Seoul-Washington alliance and warned North Korea not to misjudge the matter. Seoul made the comments as early election results indicated the final outcome, that Donald Trump would become America's next president.
Pyongyang should not misjudge the strong South Korea-U.S. alliance and our response measures against North Korea.
U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert had also said the same, saying Seoul and Washington had a special alliance over 60 years with its ups and downs, but the alliance will always get stronger regardless of who wins the U.S. presidency. His comments come in response to concerns that Trump's election would trigger a foreign policy crisis in Washington, including its strategy for dealing with North Korea. During the campaign, Trump had questioned the value of U.S. alliances, saying South Korea and Japan should build their own nuclear arsenals rather than depending on the U.S. Trump had also said that the allies should pay for more American defense or that he could withdraw U.S. troops from the peninsula if South Korea didn't pay its fair share. The North's official Korean Central News Agency reported on the same day that Kim Jong-un had inspected a unit of the Korean People's Army, ordering the troops to be ready for combat, indicating that North Korea could be gearing up for any uncertainties in the U.S. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The U.S. election result is sending shockwaves on the economic front as well. While local businesses are bracing for a potential impact, monetary policies around the world may see another turn of events. Shin Se-min zooms in on that ripple effect.
Korea's top economic policymakers said Donald Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential election is feared to shake global financial markets and that he'll stand firm to deal with potential risks. Finance Minister Yoo said that the government will remain firm to push forward with the country's fiscal policies. Korea's finance-related officials held separate meetings earlier on Wednesday where they all vowed to cooperate with each other to maintain market stabilization and that the government will take action to curb volatility if necessary. With the change in U.S. leadership, businesses in Korea are also bracing for a shift. Strains on trade between Korea and the U.S. is likely to take place as Trump reiterated the bilateral Seoul-Washington Free Trade Agreement has killed nearly 100,000 American jobs, especially in the auto industry and other key sectors. Thus, renegotiations on the course FTA is expected to be on the table. And if the U.S. decides to put stronger regulations on imports, especially on oversupplied products like steel and chemicals, that could also hurt Korean firms dependent on exports to the U.S., although it may not be an across-the-board problem.
Tighter U.S. regulations on imports does not immediately mean a slump in Korea's exports. But it could mean a lot for individual companies doing business with the U.S. Even if a number of firms face higher tariffs, that's still a small portion of Korean firms.
On the monetary policy front, Trump's victory could largely trigger uncertainty and volatility in the market, probably even derailing the Fed's December rate hike scenario. Market watchers worry that considering slow pace of growth seen around the world, there seems to be not much room for central banks for a rate cut, bouncing some of the impact by lowering rates as they have done so through the Brexit decision last June. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And as mentioned in that story, Korean financial authorities are taking action to keep an eye on the local financial market in the aftermath of Donald Trump's victory. High-ranking officials from the Financial Services Commission and the Financial Supervisory Commission held an emergency joint meeting on Wednesday to discuss the potential impact in the country and come up with countermeasures. The meeting was also attended by the head of the local stock market, the Korea Exchange, and several other research institutes. This morning, Vice Finance Minister Cha Eun-taek said although it is a bit early, the government will take action to curb volatility if needed. Korea's main index today fell 2.25% to close at 1958. Major exporters like Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor fell in the 3% range. The Korean currency also lost ground against the greenback at 1,150, down 15 from yesterday's close. A clear call for a drastic change. That's the message Americans seem to have sent by electing Donald Trump the President of the United States. Let's dig a little deeper into what this bold new era could promise to the nation and the world. To help us make sense of it, we have Professor Kim Tae-hyun from Chungang University with us here. Thank you for joining us today, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, it's seen as a shocking upset. I understand you lost some sleep over it as well. Many analysts perceive it will be Hillary Clinton, the logical and sound choice. But clearly the cohesiveness and drive of those who see eye to eye with Trump's radical style, it was quite overwhelming. What can we take from this development?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump read the people's minds, particularly those who have been suffering from the unending globalization, losing their jobs because of international competitions and so on, with blue-collar manufacturing workers around the Rust Belt. So as of yesterday, New York Times, the Washington Post, all established mass media predicted that Hillary Clinton's win by winning those states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, while losing Ohio, North Carolina, and Florida to Trump. But Trump won those Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which are widely representing the Rust Belt. So Rust Belt really matters in these elections.
Right. Other than winning those key states, the silent majority, as they would call it, prevails, and some would say most polls had numbers stacked against Trump. So tell us more about how these unsung heroes developed or contributed to Trump's success.
Well, I mean, we have been observing a kind of a worldwide phenomena, which you may call it Trumpism. Okay, we have observed that in Britain when they voted for Brexit. I mean, those people are against the fallout of globalization. They have to accept migrants and refugees, and they thought that they are losing their jobs to international competitions, and that brought into the United States as well. I mean, so as people, some perceptive people already saw that they were not surprised to see Donald Trump rising, but they were surprised that it was taking that late. So, I mean, he really correctly read that. But, I mean, Donald Trump's behavior was so erratic and we could not, I mean, hardly acceptable. That's why people have hidden their voices when they ask who they are supporting.
Right.
So that
they want to sound like a sane person.
Right. Everybody was, I mean, so surprised that the late poll shows that Hillary Clinton was still leading, but the result was the opposite. So there was silent voices. Even they are saying, oh, I can't vote for a person like Donald Trump, but actually they did, because so they are unhappy with the establishment. And Hillary Clinton is really representing the political establishment that they felt they are not feeling their own desire and dissatisfaction and so on.
Right, fueled by the anger and disappointment of the people that helped Trump fly the plane. It's taken flight, now it's landing. That's the problem once it's in charge of the country. Let's look at some of its track record. The reality show star grabbed headlines for grabbing women allegedly. And of course, there were extreme sexist and racist remarks that he had talked about. How can he repair those his image, which has been damaged with all these remarks?
By winning the election and sitting in the Blue House, the Oval Office will make him look like a president, really. And instead of speaking out of his belly, he better read from the prompter. And I think over time he will repair his images. I had that kind of experiences before, that sometimes when I saw the American president candidate, I didn't think that he had the presidential look. But once he was elected, and I thought, oh, this guy has a presidential look. So he may have taken expectation, but already in his thank remarks or speeches, he was speaking to the people, the nation, that he will work for the entire nation, not for protection of the nation and so on. So
it's like a different person from the person who was running for the campaign.
So he became the different person once he became the president.
Well, hope springs eternal that he is a much more different person than what the media has covered in terms of this bad publicity. Let's talk about the impact this will have on Korea. He called the Korea-U.S. FTA a very flawed deal, but this was the Trump before he was elected president, so hopefully he's a little bit different. So he promised to make changes to America's advantage. So should we be concerned, and how can we be better prepared against the possible drastic changes to come?
You know, I mean, there is one thing that you say as a president candidate is one thing, and you say something as president is the other thing. So I would say, I mean, the worry should be less than while he was a candidate. But still, once he spoke publicly and he appealed to the people who thought they are suffering from the free trade, I think obviously the United States will demand some kind of renegotiation of terms of chorus FTA, so we should be prepared. And I think that Mr. Trump was speaking from the general picture, not the detailed picture, but obviously we should prepare some kind by numbers, by statistics, that Korea's FTA is not a one side winning, the other side losing, but it's more like a win-win solution. We have to prove that by numbers and statistics. I think that our government and other related officials should be ready for that.
Right, perhaps Donald Trump will be better informed and educated about the soundness of the deal.
Of course, yeah.
And let's talk about defense. Seoul-Washington Defense Alliance, things could shape up a little differently because he kept emphasizing that the U.S. is taking advantage of with defense cost sharing. Will we see some drastic changes in that area?
Well, that concerns me the most, given that North Korea has been doing such kind of provocative actions recently, this year in particular. I mean, it may destabilize RK-U.S. bilateral alliances a little bit. Obviously, I think he will demand some change in renegotiation of defense burden sharing with RK. And what makes me really worry is that we will have election on own election for sure next year, maybe earlier, so it depends on our circumstances. And very likely we will have a president from more progressive parties.
Right.
So they combine the U.S. demand and so on, it may destabilize. In the context, on the one hand, North Korea is doing provocative actions. On the other hand, U.S.-China relations is getting worse. So that really makes me worry. But we have previous experiences. In 1976, President Jimmy Carter was elected on the platform that he would withdraw the U.S. force of Korea. But given the own international constraint as well as domestic constraint, he withdrew that one. So I think that once he became president and he realized that how United States is locked up with the rest of the world, that's the 192 other members of the United Nations, and also domestically there are so many institutions, military and State Department, all others are also locked up, then I think he may have developed more balanced perspective on the importance of a bilateral alliance.
Right, right. Now the ball is on Donald Trump's court, whether he will disappoint those who voted for him for his drastic promises, or if he will become a more normal, stable president that he is expected to become once he's at that position. Thank you so much for your time, Professor Kim Tae-in. We look forward to having you back here again someday soon.
Okay.
The President's senior secretary for politics paid another visit to the National Assembly to further explain President Park's views on the role of the new prime minister. The presidential office of Cha Eun-taek said it will guarantee the new prime minister has practical power and authority over state affairs, including the ability to set up his or her own cabinet, and said the president will immediately appoint the nominee proposed by the political parties. The Tuesday visit follows a visit by President Park on Monday when she asked the parliament to recommend a prime minister nominee of its choice. The top office is currently trying to arrange a meeting between the president and political party leaders at an earliest date possible so they can discuss the details of the new prime minister's responsibilities, but opposition parties have yet to agree to that meeting. The three main political parties have unified their stance on the President Park Geun-hye's proposal that they choose a candidate for prime minister. This is a response from the main opposition parties, that is. They rejected her calls for the opposition bloc to recommend the new prime minister. Ji Myung-gil looks into the brewing anger and distrust from the assembly.
Korea's three main opposition parties said Wednesday that President Park Geun-hye is not dealing with the fallout from the scandal gripping the nation, but leaving room for herself to regain control of her administration at a later date.
The people are outraged because the president is neither stepping aside to renounce her power or to resign the presidency. She has lost the capability and moral authority to run state affairs.
At a rare visit to Parliament on Tuesday, President Park had indicated to Assembly Speaker Chung Se-kyun that she would hand control of the cabinet to a prime minister recommended by the opposition bloc. But the opposition parties have rejected her request. They said that the visit was all for show and made it seem like it was the opposition, not the president, that was cutting off communication.
The president thinks that with her visit to parliament, the ball is in the opposition's court, but she cannot use it to cover up the Park Geun-hye Chaesun-sil scandal.
The more outspoken Justice Party slammed President Park for not fully clarifying the scope of authority she would give to the new prime minister.
A neutral cabinet can be effective only when the president hands over executive power to the prime minister. If the president steps aside, that will effectively signal her resignation.
They also said the president is trying to evade responsibility with nothing more than stopgap measures and urged her to give up her ruling party membership. Meanwhile, members of the ruling Saenuri Party remain divided on how the party should handle the political scandal involving President Park's confidant. Lawmakers from the non-pro-Park faction are pushing for a separate leadership within the party to purge the pro-Park wing. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, prosecutors revealed on Wednesday that one of the two foundations embroiled in the Cha Eun-taek case returned up to $6 million in donations from Lotte Group just a day before prosecutors raided the company, raising eyebrows in terms of the timing and further deepening the list of suspicious allegations in this ongoing political scandal. Kim Il-sung has the details.
Prosecutors stepped up their investigation into the abuse of power scandal swirling around President Park Geun-hye's confidant, Cha Eun-taek. On Wednesday, they raided the homes of 4 presidential aides, including An Bong-geun and Lee Jae-man, who served as presidential secretaries for public relations and administrative affairs. The two have had close ties with President Park since 1998 and are accused of leaking confidential state documents and presidential speeches to Choi. Prosecutors reported they seized cell phones and hard disks related to the case. At the same time, state prosecutors are widening their probe into all 53 companies that are related to the 2 government-linked foundations at the center of the scandal. Cha Eun-taek is accused of forcing Korean corporations to donate roughly $70 million to the 2 foundations, Miru and K-Sports. Prosecutors announced Wednesday they discovered K-Sports had returned $6 million to Lotte Group on the day before they raided the retail giant. The raid happened on June 10th and was conducted in connection with an investigation into the corruption charges against the founding family. Prosecutors said K-Sports returned the money to Lotte Group between June 9th and 14th. The timing of the events raised suspicions that someone had leaked information on the probe to K-Sports. Prosecutors say the prime suspect is former Presidential Secretary of Civil Affairs Woo Byung-woo. Kim Il-sung, Arirang News.
Another key figure in the expanding scandal, Cha Eun-taek, was detained last night and questioned overnight. Cha is undergoing another round of questioning, and prosecutors are likely to request an arrest warrant for him within the next 48 hours. Lee Ji-won tells us more.
State prosecutors summoned music video producer Cha Eun-taek, who has close ties to Cha Eun-taek, for a second round of questioning on Wednesday morning, just over 4 hours after the first round ended. Cha, a key figure in the ongoing Cha Eun-taek scandal, had been in China since the scandal broke, and he was detained upon his arrival at Incheon International Airport on Tuesday night for the first round of questioning, which lasted for around 4 hours. Speaking to reporters at the airport, Cha said he was sorry for causing such a stir and vowed to reveal everything during the prosecutor's investigation. He also admitted to knowing former key presidential secretary An Jong-bum, but didn't answer a question about his ties to Cha Eun-taek, the key figure in the ongoing abuse of power scandal rattling the nation. Cha is believed to have been deeply involved in the establishment and management of 2 government-linked foundations that were controlled by Choi, who allegedly forced Korean conglomerates to donate huge sums of money to the organizations. He's also suspected of embezzling funds from an advertising company he ran and is accused of attempting to extort shares from a separate advertising firm formerly affiliated with steelmaker POSCO. Prosecutors are likely to request an arrest warrant for Cha before the 48-hour emergency detention period expires on Thursday night. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
That's all from me for now. More domestic news updates straight ahead, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Devin Whiting with more of your domestic news. The latest figures show job growth in Korea remained weak last month. That's due in part to Korea's corporate restructuring drive in the manufacturing sector, especially in regions where the country's major shipbuilders are located. Kim In-ji breaks down the numbers for us.
Korea's job market remained sluggish in October. Statistics Korea says the country added 278,000 new jobs last month from a year ago, bringing the total number of employed to almost 26.6 million. The figure has stayed below the 300,000 mark for the second straight month. The ministry attributes a feeble growth to the government's ongoing corporate restructuring drive, which has taken a toll on the country's manufacturing sector. Jobs in the manufacturing industry have fallen for 4 straight months.
Jobs in the manufacturing sector fell 115,000 in October, expanding from the previous month. Although the overall figure job growth improved slightly on month, the corporate restructuring drive and slump in exports continues to weigh on the manufacturing industry.
Despite job growth picking up in the retail, accommodation and dining sectors, boosted by increased domestic spending and an influx of tourists due to the country's sales event last month, it wasn't enough to prop up the job market. In fact, the country's jobless rate sits at 3.4%, up 0.3 percentage points from last year. It also marks the highest figure for the month of October since 2005. For young people, the situation wasn't any better, with the youth jobless rate at 8.5% last month, the highest for the month of October in 17 years. And prospects for the job market aren't all that bright down the road.
The fallout from the ongoing corporate restructuring drive is expected to continue through next year, and the economy in general is slow. As a result, companies' capacity to create quality jobs is shrinking because business sentiment is weak and investment is falling.
While the government has vowed to make sure its budget supplement is implemented smoothly to breathe life into the economy and help improve job market conditions, experts say the funds shouldn't be used on short-term policies to boost the jobs figures. They say instead it should be focused on fundamental long-term measures, such as policies aimed at helping to raise the competitiveness of small and medium-sized companies, or ones that help lift investment among big companies in order to create better quality jobs. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, data show Korea's economy may be too dependent on the construction sector. According to the OECD, Korea is the only economy growing at more than 2% a year that relies on construction for more than half of its growth. Comparing second quarter GDP figures, the international organization said Seoul's investment in the construction sector contributed 1.7 percentage points toward its growth of 3.2%. With the government announcing measures to cool the property market earlier this month, experts say a sharp dip in construction investment is inevitable next year, and that the government needs to mobilize all policy measures to fill the gap with other business investments. Victims of identity theft and breaches of privacy will be able to change the latter half of their resident registration number beginning next year. The Ministry of the Interior announced on Wednesday that it will submit a bill to Parliament revising the Resident Registration Act that would allow people to change the last 6 digits of their registration number if the leak of the number is deemed a threat to life or property. However, the first 6 digits that represent the resident's date of birth are not subject to change. The revised bill is slated to be submitted to the National Assembly next month for approval, and it'll take effect on May 30th next year. And those are some of the stories we're following right now. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at 8 p.m. Korea time. Bye for now.